So Sonic Artifacts, the portable music player. This is what I am doing my final assignment on. So I'm following the prompt of tracing back history of a specific sort of artifact. And I chose the portable music player. And so I want to explore different devices that were really pinnacle in creating this new way of listening to music, this new form of listening to music on the go and being able to access music from different sources at a moment's notice, as needed by the user, as needed by the customers. So, portable music player by Jojo Okai. So, in my essay, I kind of start out by talking about the history of sound and how sound in general has fostered these actual realities that we find ourselves in. So I start out by talking about how sound is an everlasting phenomenon, and it encompasses the world and the society that we have built. It's basically interwoven into all our lives. Sound is one of the five senses. So in a way, to wrap up this whole course, I just felt like I should mention in the first paragraph and introduction about how sound it's basically pinnacle, and it is everything. It's such a big part of our lives and a part of our culture. And so whether it's actual sound or the lack of sound is pinnacle to who we are as a species and as a people. So the sonic world is rich in history and antiquities that severely impacted the way we as a people interact with our world and each other. As I'm referring to the artifacts that I will start to mention, the first thing of all, obviously, is music. Music is more than a part of our culture. It is its own distinct identity. It's fluid ways of sound coming together in a sequence that appeals to certain groups of people. There's different types of music, and throughout time, we've moved from, there's traditional music, there's been classical music, there's music is in general. First of all, how you define music is very hard, but for this essay, be just looking at the scope of music and sound as it appeals to groups of people. Now I move on to portability in these sonic artifacts. And the first portable, when I talked about portability in my essay, I talked about three different devices, from the Sony Walkman to the Apple iPod. I also talk about the Discman, as well as one of the revolutionary sonic artifacts and devices that produce music. So in general, my whole thing is about portability and how revolutionary it was, and the concept of portability of being able to move around, being able to have something light and easy to use in your pocket is what my essay is about. So then I move on to the Sony Walkman. Honestly, one of the greatest, in my opinion, greatest inventions of our last centuries. It was invented in the late 1900s, end of 1900s, early 1990s. So Sony commercialized the Walkman, the first ever commercialized portable cassette player. It was plug in, you play, you listen to it, and you are basically walking around with music in your ears, and you're able to listen to this with ease and with comfort. And one of the quotes I used was the autonomy of the walking self. It was one of the terms coined during this era, talking about how it was the first portable, moving source of music. And I talk about how Sony was able to understand the generation of its customers and how it was able to show that people wanted to listen to music on the move, on the go, not just in a static place, not just in a designated area. They wanted to be able to listen to music as they were moving. And most of this was from the young generation. So I started to talk about how it's a shift in the culture and how the actual culture started to shift in identifying as a portable music listener. How being able to move and having the Walkman in general, and this idea of the walking man who listens to music, started becoming an identity. So I go into that, and so I go into how it moved through the soundscape, bringing with it its own culture. The actual device brought about its own culture and actually changed the culture that pre-existed before the Walkman became as popular as it is. So I talk about how the Walkman directed young customers, and it was aimed at those people, and it was aimed at the moving youth. It really changed human perception. It was than any other gadget before it. It came with different designs, colors, so that alone, it changed the culture of having to want something like this. It became a cultural icon. It became something of style, something of class. It became this iconic part of your actual clothing, part of your identity, and having the Walkman evolved past just music, but into all of these different realms. So then I do talk about the Discman and how the format of storing music changed from the cassette player to the disc, and how CDs were also in itself revolutionary. And even to this day, we still have CDs. Not so much the cassettes anymore, all praise to the Walkman, but not so much the cassettes anymore. But in this day, we still have CDs reverberating through our culture. So we then go on to the iPod, the infamous iPod created by Apple in 2001. It was undoubtedly one of the most revolutionary sound devices to come out in the last 20 years. It really changed the way we interact with music. This idea of more is better was really what grasped users to be able to have access to more music, to be able to have access to different types of music all at once. So you're able to change at will what you want to hear, what you want to listen to. It was an aesthetic. It became who you were. Like the type of music you listen to, the music you actually listen to became who you were. Like it became your mood. It became your persona. That's what, first of all, music in general could do, and the iPod facilitated that in people. And this whole idea of perceived individuality is something I go quite deep into in my essay. This idea of escapism, escaping the outside world and going into an individual experience, individual reality, to be able to control your surroundings and be able to micromanage your mood and environment and the sound and the music that you are constantly listening to. Once again, the iPod allowed for basically non-stop listening. As long as your battery lasted, you were able to listen to music non-stop, whatever type of music you wanted, however you felt in that moment. If you felt like you wanted sad music, happy music, you were able to manage this as you saw fit. So it became your identity, it became what your experience is at any moment in time. Furthermore, I also go into how it became sort of a cultural norm, a social norm, that when someone had an iPod, certain things are associated with having that iPod. Maybe not disturbing them, maybe understanding that they are in their own space, in their own like time, in their own realm. They're experiencing something else outside of the outside world. So I go in depth into that as well. So I've already reached the 10-minute mark. So in conclusion, I just that I talk about these sonic artifacts and the portable music players as a whole, and how they really change society, and how society created these objects, and then these objects then changed society and social norms, and created new identities for people, for for these users and for these customers, and it shaped our general interaction with these artifacts. And I describe how new forms of technology will be developed, new ways of listening will be developed, new ways of experiencing music will be found and created. But this pull and push, and this creating and reshaping of culture will continue to last, no matter the medium of the sonic artifact. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I'm Jojo Okai, and this is my presentation on portable music players, the sonic artifacts.